Sit beside a mountain stream, see the waters rise, listen to the pretty sound of music as she flies. Find me in my field of grass, Mother Nature's son, swaying daisies, sing a lazy song beneath the sun. Okay, so there's 4 parts to the song. There's an introduction, there's a verse, there's a little interlude that you play after the verse, and then there's a 4th piece which we'll call the middle 8. Let's first of all start with the introduction. There's a very specific strumming pattern throughout the song, and one of the easiest things about that is that it doesn't change at all. What the right hand is doing is pretty consistent throughout the entire song. So the first things first, let's just play a D chord. So you've got D, if you play a D chord, and what we need to do first before we start doing anything else is just literally just to concentrate on the pattern that the right hand is playing. It's quite a sort of very typical of Paul McCartney. Basically, if we play it slowly, it's a pluck of the D string and the high E string. Just goes to that, followed by, again, like I said, a very sort of Paul McCartney-esque rhythm, which is sort of tends to fluctuate between being and, which is basically down, up, down, up, down, up. It's in 4/4 timing, so if we play it very slowly, I'll play it one more time slowly. And before you continue with the rest of the song, it is very important to get the right hand movements down. The good thing is once you've learned what the right hand's doing, it's pretty much plain sailing from there. It doesn't really deviate from that pattern throughout the entire song. So one more time, very slowly, let's get that pattern as. So the rhythm would be ba 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 ba. Okay, so once you've got that, the song starts with a very simple sort of arpeggio idea, the very introduction. We've got this chord here, which is basically first finger on the 2nd fret on the high E string, middle finger on the 3rd fret on the B string, and ring finger on the 4th fret of the G string, which gives us that minor chord sound there. Basically with the thumb it's G, followed by these 2 notes. Have you got that? followed by a basic D chord. That's all that is, D-shaped chord. First finger on the 2nd fret of the G string, middle finger on the 2nd fret of the E string, and 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the B string, which gives us our D. And again, the right hand is doing exactly the same thing. Literally the only thing that's changed is that we've brought that note down to there. So if you put those two little sections together, you get followed by and then the third little part of the intro is basically all we do is bring that first finger down a fret and keep the other two fingers exactly where they were. And of course the right hand does the same thing. And we finish the introduction off with a very simple, which is literally just the bass, the bottom A string on its own. So if you put that together and we'll play it really slowly, we've got I mean, it's optional whether you want to put that section in. I mean, I think it's basically on the original recording it's played obviously on a bass drum, but just for the sake of authenticity, you can put the tap in. So if you put it together, and that concludes the introduction of the song. The second section, this is where the song kicks off. Now if we go back to the right hand rhythm section that we discussed a few moments ago, we've got that right hand pluck da 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 da, pluck da 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 da. It's very important to kind of forget about what the A string and the E string for now. Let's concentrate on what the top 4 strings are doing. So the first chord of the section is we've got a D chord, basic D chord. All we do is we bring our little finger onto the 5th fret on the E string. So if we play a D chord and do that, we end up with this chord here. And then if we apply that using the right hand rhythm pattern, that's the very first bar. And then we continue with the right hand pattern, but this time we move the biggest finger onto the 3rd fret on the top E string, which gives us this chord. And again, keeping the same right hand pattern, we take our 2nd finger off the E string, which gives us this chord. And again, little thing that you need to be a bit wary of when you're playing this part is it does deviate slightly in as much as it goes. We've got I'll play that again very, very slowly because you should be able to get a fairly accurate idea of what's going on just by watching my left and right hand. So I'll play it very, very slowly. Pluck, which is basically that part is just a pull off. 4th finger on the 3rd fret, pulling off, which takes us back to our original D chord. So let's go through that section. Literally the first 4 bars very slowly. Pluck, 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 pluck. If you got that, and then what we then have is back to our D chord. Again, what we do is we end up doing a hammer on. So we take our 2nd finger off the E string and hammer on to the 2nd fret. And again, there'll be hammer on with our little finger back on to the 3rd fret, so it would go hammer on, hammer on, hammer on. So if we put that entire section together, and we'll play it very, very, very slowly. Let's just do that one more time. Pluck, pluck. And that completely concludes the introduction of the song. After that we go straight into the verse. The verse is incredibly simple. Like I mentioned before, the one thing you don't have to worry about with this track is what the right hand is doing. It's very simple. That sort of pattern is consistent throughout the entire piece. So starting with the first chord of the verse, which is a basic D, basic D chord, then that is for literally, it's only for 4 beats, for 1 bar. 2, 3, 4. Following that we play, the bass note stays the same, which is a D. The slight difference, the second chord is we have our first finger barring the 3rd fret on the E string on the 3rd fret on the B string, and also our middle finger would go over the 4th fret on the G string, which gives us this chord. That's a cheery Paul McCartney-esque sort of chord. And again, right hand is doing exactly as it did before. So, to put things in perspective, we've got D, stay on that chord, and then back to D. So that's the first 4 bars of the intro of the verse. That's the first 4 bars of the verse. Let's do that one more time very slowly. And back to D. And the 5th bar of the verse brings us back to that arpeggio chord, which is exactly the same chord as the introduction, so I won't go over the fingering for it, but basically we've got, again, right hand's doing the same thing. The only difference is we've got that chord there, which is the one that we heard in the introduction. Right hand doing the same thing. Bringing it down to there. Bringing it down to there. With the E. So basically the end section of the first verse is exactly the same as the intro, but slightly more complicated. So what we'll do is we'll play the first section of the verse from the very top, very, very slowly, okay? The only thing you do need to remember is obviously when we're going into that section is to play the G string and not the D string. This brings us...
And then you've just got that little bass run to add in. Basically, you use your thumb on your right hand to pluck the open 6th string. And then use your 3rd finger on your left hand to fret the 2nd fret on the 6th string, and you sort of slide up from the 2nd fret to the 4th fret, so you kind of go then you cut it off, so you sort of go, you put your thumb back on it so it doesn't ring out like this. You go, put the thumb on it again to mute it off. And then you play, use your thumb again, it's all the thumb this little run. Use the thumb on the A string 2nd fret, and then take the finger pressure off the strings. You know, you don't actually take your finger off the string completely, but you deaden it by lifting the first finger of the left hand off slightly. So instead of, you mute that string by taking the pressure off a bit. And then you've got the note here on the 4th string 2nd fret, so you've got, actually this finger can just bar across the 2 strings, so you don't have to move it down to play the D string, so you just go. Okay, so that's that little in-between bit.
D string. This brings us on to the second. I mean, it depends which way you want to sort of, depends how you sort of look at it really. I mean, I tend to refer to this section as being part 2 with a verse. But I mean, it's entirely on how you perceive the piece. But basically, from that section, we go into the slight change in rhythm, which so section 2 of the verse would go. What I'll do is I'll slow that down and then I'll explain what's going on, because there's a few little details that need to be taken into account. So we've got the first thing that you need to notice is the bass note, what the bass is doing. If you listen, the bass in that, which is an A string, this is where we use the A string for the first time in the song, is basically going etc. It's a very sort of persistent rhythm, and it's important to capture that. So you go, now what you're basically playing is an A chord, so we've got open A string, which we're going to use as our bass, and with the first finger just bar the 2nd fret on the D string, 2nd fret on the G string, and 2nd fret on the B string, which gives us that. And then our 4th finger, or little finger, goes on the 5th fret of the high E string, which gives us that chord. Once you've got that, just basically what first you need to do is practice getting the bass note, followed by an upwards motion with your first finger on your right hand. Once you've got that, there's a slight difference in as much as our middle finger on the left hand is going so it's basically constantly fluctuating from being off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, and that coordinates with what the bass is doing. So I'll play it very, very, very slowly. Again, what you want to be sort of aiming at doing is incorporating that pluck motion that, as I said, is consistent throughout the entire piece. So pluck. So you pluck the A string and the third fret on the B string. So middle finger on and pluck. I'll do that again very slowly. the upward motion. We'll do that very slowly, just to make sure that we've got all the little nuances right. So bass, up, pluck, up, bass, up, pluck, up, pluck, up. And obviously if you were to play that at speed, it would sound as... And you'd literally do this 8 times, that motion. So if we play it from, if we go from the top of the verse very quickly, or what we'll do, we'll go from, in fact, let's put those 2 sections together now. So we've got the D. We'll go from the we'll go from the very start of the first verse. We'll go from the very start to the first verse. Into section 2. Up, pluck, down, up, pluck, up, down, up, pluck. Following that, we've got, I sort of tend to refer to this section as being the outro of the verse, or sort of the conclusion to the verse. I mean, whether or not, I mean, essentially it could also be referred to as, you know, still verse 1. But either way, it goes... Very simple idea. Now again, what the right hand is doing is that I'll play that very slowly, so it's down, up, down, up, down. The right hand does that throughout this section. The only thing we need to be a bit wary of is that the 4th finger, little finger, is going between the 3rd fret and off, hammering on, off, off, off. So if I play it very slowly. On, off. So off, on, off. Exactly the same principle applies to the next chord. So that's basically on a D chord, with our little finger going on and off. Then we've got this shape, which is basically the first finger would bar the 1st and the 2nd fret. The first on the first finger will bar the 1st fret on the E string on the 1st fret on the B string, while our 2nd finger plays the 2nd fret on the G string, which gives us that chord with a D in the bass. And exactly the same principle as before, except instead of doing it with a D chord, we're going so exactly the same as before, except the chord has changed slightly. What we then do is bring exactly the same chord shape, exactly the same, but we slide that shape up 2 frets, which brings us to there. So the first finger is barring the first finger, is barring the 3rd fret on the E string, 3rd fret on the B string, and 4th fret on the G string, and again D in the bass. Just gives us that chord, and this time our little finger is going on and off of that fret. So let's put that section together very, very slowly. So we've got D, change, change, and back to D. Change, and back to D. So if you play this at speed, it would sound the most important thing with this particular section is to not neglect to do the pluck-in motion. So we've got that pluck. So pluck, 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 pluck. So as I said, that plucking motion is very integral to the song, and it's there throughout the piece. Following that section, there's a slight change, which I'll cover in a sec. So basically, let's just go through that very, very quickly one more time at speed. What I'll now do is I'll explain the section that comes after that. Well, first of all, I'll play the section very slowly and then I'll explain what's happening with it. So the first thing we need to do is form this chord here. So it's basically the first finger on the 5th fret of the high E string, the 3rd finger on the 7th fret of the B string, the 2nd finger on the 7th fret of the G string, and again we've got the D string open, which gives us this chord here. And then what I'll do is I'll very slowly play that section, then I'll explain what's going on. So we've got pluck. As I said before, we've got that plucking motion, followed by let's put that together. Little finger goes onto the 8th fret. You can just watch what my right hand is doing. If you can just, we'll just do that again very slowly. It's important to sort of take into account what the right hand is doing, because the left hand finger doesn't change that much. You got then you've got the same motion with the right hand, but we play a D-shaped chord, but we start it on the 7th fret. So we've got obviously first finger on the G string of the 7th fret, second finger on the high E string on the 7th fret, and the ring finger on the 8th fret on the B string. And again, the same thing with the right hand. That's sort of very simple simple sort of arpeggiated idea, followed by, so if we put that together, okay, so if we put that idea together, followed by with a little strum at the end. I'll play it very, very slowly because it's probably a lot easier to sort of figure out what's going on by watching as opposed to sort of listening. So we've got change, I'll play that very, very slowly. And that repeats twice. I'll play it at speed so you can hear it in context. And we'll do it one more time, very, very, very slowly, just to make sure that everything is there. So we've got now what you probably want to do is learn this section separately and just practice that motion, because once you've done it a few times, your hands start to memorize the pattern. I mean, it's a very simple pattern, so just practice that part on its own, and then obviously put it in context with the rest of the song. What I'll do very quickly is I'll go from the section before and I'll lead into this section. Play along if you can. I'll obviously slow it down, so now once you've got that, incredibly simple section. Again, the right hand is doing that same old what it's been doing throughout the song. So we've got a very simple idea, the same chord that we've just played, that chord. First finger on the 5th fret, ring finger on the 7th fret on the B string, and the middle finger on the 7th fret on the G string. Gives us that chord. All we're doing is going so it's exactly the same principle as the section before. What we do then is bring our middle finger down a fret. Then we basically bar those 3 strings, so that's the 5th fret, the G, the B and the E with our first finger. So let's put that together. Followed by, again, exactly the same principle. Now, we've learned this chord in the previous section, but just to go over it, it's basically first finger bars the 3rd fret on the E and the 3rd fret on the B, followed by the 4th fret on the G, and obviously the D in the bass, followed by a bar of those 3. And then we go back to our old familiar D chord. Before the start of verse 2. Obviously the chords are exactly the same for verse 2. The only thing that does change is obviously the lyrics. What I do quickly want to do is I want to go over that section very quickly, and I'll link the pieces together just to sort of help keep things in perspective. So we'll go very slowly from one final thing, the very end of the song. Now, obviously, if you listen to the recording, that part towards the end of the song, that sort of section that is played, will already be familiar with you. The song ends on a D7th chord, basically. So if you're playing a D major chord, it's almost backwards, the reverse of that. D7th. So you've got middle finger on the 2nd fret of the G string. You've got your 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the E string, and your 1st finger on the 1st fret of the B string, and an open D. So let's go from the very end. So this is the final section of the song. We've already learned this bit. So yeah, I mean, the only sort of difficulty you might find there, and what might take a little bit of practice, is going from into the D chord. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. Good luck with it. Like before we leave, just pay close attention to what the right hand is doing and the little nuances of the left hand, and you shouldn't go far wrong. Cheers. Thank you.